Morning, good week, as we start the new Parsha, the Parsha of Teruma. God spoke to Moses saying, Dabal B'nai Yisrael, speak to the Jewish people. But Yichuli Teruma, and they should take for me an offering. And every person who has inspired by the heart, Tikhu es Terumasi, they should take this Teruma. So Rashi says, V'yikruli Teruma li, when it says in the Torah li, to me means lishmi, which means the concept of lishma. The aspect when you do something, you should do for the sake of God, lishma. Lishmi, to my name. Truma, what is truma? Truma is hafrasha, means to separate. They shall set apart their property. So when a person separates already, even before he gives it, it's a concept of truma. Idvenu libay. What means the inspired by the heart, generosity of the heart? It's an expression of the dova, which means a goodwill. It's not an obligation. And as Rashi is going to say, there's three kinds of trumas here. Tikchuli is tinmasi. The pasuk over here says 3 times truma. This pasuk and the next pasuk. The word truma is mentioned 3 times. It says, so over here, the Torah says that 3 times offerings. There's one offering is a bekel legalgolis, machsa shekel, the half a shekel, which every person gave. And they gave to the Beis Hamikdash, the Mishkan over here. And that bekel legalgolis was a half a shekel of silver that was put into the Adonim, was put into the sockets of the Mishkan that was built. As it says later in Parshas Pekudei. These are accounts. Another offering was a beka per head. And then there was a second shekel that was put into to the coffers. That was put into the Beis Hamikdash. That was put into a coffer that was bought the community sacrifices. So there was every day a carbon tamid. There was a morning sacrifice and an evening sacrifice, afternoon sacrifice. It was called a tamid shel shachris, a tamid, the morning sacrifice. Thomas Shalvein Abayim, Shachas and Mincha, established on those 2 sacrifices. And that was brought from the Machzah Shekel, which each Jew had a part of. The 13 materials mentioned in the sections of the third Truma were all required to the work of the Mishkan, the garment of the Koyim. They were nidva slave. They were the goodness of the heart. Anybody who brought more or little, that was up, as the Torah says later, they brought too much. So the machzah shekel was an obligation. The half a shekel was an obligation, while the nedava to the Beis Hamikdash, to the Mishkan, to the building of the Mishkan, was ishad ben elibay. Every person brought what they have, what they wanted to. This is the third. So this is the third truma, the truma that was given to each person according to what he wanted to give. But it's in gold, silver, and copper. These were all voluntarily. Each person gave what his heart inspired him to give, except for the silver. Again, going to the Machzah Shekel, which they gave each one a half a shekel. Each individual. You find throughout the entire Mishkan that more silver was required. As it says, the silver the community census was a beka for each head. The rest of the silver, which was given there, the work of the Mishkan, voluntary, the workers made service utensils, and we know. So there was, in the Mishkan itself, there was no silver. Everything was gold. Besides, there were certain utensils that were used for the blood and for the chatzleitzes, different utensils that were used in the Mishkan that was made out of silver. But the Mishkan itself was mainly gold. It was all gold. And the purple, blue and purple and crimson wool, the sheish izim and linen and goat's hair. Tzeles is a wool dyed by blood of the chilazon. This was an animal which bears the blue color, the chilazon, which today some people, it's the corner, the one of the tzitzis, the blue wool. Some people say they have it. It's argument about that today. If we know the dam chilazon, we know which animal this is that has blue wool, blue blood. Argaman semetzvum in seveshmei argaman. This is also purple wool, which was dyed from argaman. It's called argaman. V'sheish, sheish is pishtan, is linen. V'izim, noitzes shalizim, this was the hair of goats. Therefore, it me'azeh. They came from goats, but not the goats themselves. not just goat skins, but as it was the hair of the goats. Actually, the Torah says later how these women were experts. They would twine the hair of the goats while it was still on the goat. And they had ram skins dyed red. And atchoshim skins. Shittim and acacia wood. These were dyed red, tanned after they were made. Choshin, and Rashi says again, this is a species of animal that exists only for that time. They became extinct and has many gavonim, had many different colors to its skin, to its hide. And that was Israel was destined to build the Mishkan. That's it. They became extinct. So he brought cedars. Rejoice, shasas. Why was it called choshim shasas? And it boasts gavonim in its colors. Atze shitim, the acacia wood. Where did they get these trees in the desert? Because they had to have a lot of trees, and the majority of the Mishkan was trees, was acacia wood that was covered by gold. Besides certain vessels, the menorah, that was pure gold. But in general, everything was wood, acacia wood that was covered by gold, gold plated. So they had to have, every beam was 15 feet tall. Over 60, over 80 beams in the Beis Hamikdash itself. Mishkan itself had 60 beams. You had the beams of the curtains of the round. So there's a lot of wood. Where did they get all this wood in the desert? Tanchuma explains that Yaakov Avinu foresaw in the Holy Spirit that the Jews were destined to build the Mishkan in the desert. So he brought the cedar to Israel, to Egypt. He took from Beresh, he took from Eretz Yisrael. He brought this wood. It's interesting concept. That ultimately means that the Mishkan was built from the wood of Eretz Yisrael. So he took this wood from Eretz Yisrael, he brought it to the base, he brought it to the Mitzrayim, he planted it in Egypt. And he told the Jews, when you leave Egypt, make sure to take these humongous trees that were over 15, 20 feet tall. You make sure to take them with you in the desert. We're talking about a lot of trees. Mishkan, you have to have oil for the lighting. And spices for the anointing oil. For the incense. Shem and Zayah Zach, you have to have pure oil to continuous light. Which is made the anointed vessel of the Mishkan. The Mishkan to sanctify it. So you have to have oil for the oil was used for three basic things: for the menorah, for the minchos, all the meal offerings, and for the concept of anointing the Beis Hamikdash. And the Kehanim was used oil. And then you need to have incense. These were burned every evening and every morning. The Keteris, as explained in Parashat Tetzaveh, the word Keteris means raising smoke, hitur. And that was Temuras Oshen. It was the column of smoke that went straight up to heaven. Avnei Shoyim v'Avnei Meluyim. I'm tired. Temuras Oshen is not that's a mixed up between the outside of Mizbech. This was a column of smoke that came into the Mishkan. Brought about in the Mishkan itself a cloud of smoke. Avnei Shoyim v'Avnei Meluyim le'ephod l'choshen. Shoyim stones and filling stones for the ephod and for the choshen. Avnei Shoyim, Rashi says, Shtayim. Avnei Shoyim is the two beautiful onyx stones that were on the breastplate, top of the breastplate, which was on the shoulders of the Kohen Gadol. He had two. Let's get my book, my picture book. He had two onyx stones on his shoulders, one on each side, which was written the names of the tribes. Meluyim. Why are they called Meluyim? Filling stones. The seat in gold, sort of a hole, and the stone was placed in the filling like a holder of the stone. Le'ephod l'choshen. The shoyim stones for the ephod, and the filling stone was for the choshen. So the two beautiful onyx stones on the shoulders of the kohen, and then he wore 12 stones on his breastplate. V'asli Mikdash, very famous pasuk. V'asli Mikdash, you shall make for me a Mikdash, a sanctuary. V'shachanti b'seichem, so I shall dwell in their midst. Now she says again, the word says li, and they shall make it for my name. Again, you should do this Mishkan for the sake of heaven, l'shma. I am the architect of this Mishkan. So whatever I show you on the mountain, the tavnis, the pattern of the Mishkan, that's tavnis kol kelev, and the pattern of all its vessels, and this is the way it should be done. Now she says, here the patterns of Mishnah, Eibishter gave the Mishnah exactly the way to make this Mishkan. This verse connected to the verse of Vav, and they shall make for me a sanctuary according to the way I'm going to be the architect of this Mishkan. So they shall do tasus in the future. Rashi says, if one of the vessels is lost, or when you make a vessel in the temple, such as the tables, the menorah, the basins of Solomon made, so you might think you're going to change it. No, you shall make it according to the pattern. Don't change the pattern. So even you're going to build a Mishka, a Beis Hamikdash later, and King Solomon is going to build all these vessels. It needs to stay in the way it's I've the pattern that I've given. If the verse is not connected to what's before it, you should have written, you shall do, but so shall you do, without the word end. And therefore, it's speaking about making the tent of meeting and its vessels. Also, the first thing Torah mentions is make the ark of acacia wood. Masayim v'chetzi arka, it's a 2.5 cubits in its length. V'hama v'chetzi racha, and a cubit and a half its width. V'hama v'chetzi kamasa, and a cubit and a half its height. Now she says, like chest made without feet, made like a sort of a chest called a sirin, a chest or a box, which rests on its bottom without being raised on the floor from attached legs. So it's a box. Orin is a box. It's a piece of observed Torah bias in bechutz, and then you shall overlay it. Again, so there's 3 boxes that Rashi going to say. There was a box in the middle that was wood, and there was a box in the outside that covered the wood box inside, and there was a box on the inside. So there was 3 boxes that he made. But inside of an answer, overlay it and make upon it a crown vasisal of zelzov. Now she says, B'Tzalel made 3 arks, 2 of gold and 1 of wood, each one that had 4 walls and a bottom, and they were open on the top. He placed the wooden one inside the golden one, and then the 3rd golden one inside the wooden one. He covered the upper rim, because if you take 3 boxes, you can still have wood. The middle box will still show it. So he made the upper box, the middle box, the 3rd box, the inner box that had a rim that covered the wood. And therefore, you did not see the wood. You only saw the gold on the outside, and you only saw the gold on the inside. And then he made around the corner of the outer box, he made a zerzav. Now just like a crown surrounding from above the rim. But he B'Tzalel made the outer ark higher than the inner ark. So the inner ark laid inside the outer ark, the outer golden ark. So really, you only saw the outer golden ark, because then he put a lid on it. So it's like there was like an indentation in the outer one. The outer one was the biggest one. And then he put the middle one, the wooden one. Then he put inside a golden one, but the golden one settled inside the outer golden box. The inner golden box settled inside the outer golden box. And the ark lies in the thickness of its wall. The crown extended slightly over the thickness of the ark cover. So then the cover went inside. So the cover also it was a flat box, ultimately. It looked like a flat box with a cover, because the cover went also in the indentation of the outer bigger box. So our outer bigger box had the capability to sort of swallow the inner box, the wooden box, the inner golden box, and even the cover that was flat with the top of the box, the outer box. And then there was a golden corner around the outer box. And what is the symbolic of this crown? So who's similar Torah? This was the symbol of the crown of Torah, which we put on every Torah. We put a crown, because the Aron was a symbol of the giving of the Torah. Kesed Torah, the crown of Torah. As the Mishnah says, there are 3 crowns, the crown of Torah. One of them is the crown of Torah. So on this box, then you shall cast 4 rings on this box. You shall put these rings on the 4 corners of this box. 2 rings on one side, and 2 rings on the second side. Now she says the expression of casting, we have sakta, parmov, corners. That's unkelis. Unkelis is it's corners. They were attached to the upper corners, close to the ark cover. 2 of them here and 2 of them there across the width of the ark. And the poles were placed in the rings. The length of the ark separated the 2 poles, 2.5 cubits between each pole, right? Because it went to the width of the ark. So if the ark length was 2.5 cubits, the poles were separated by 2.5 cubits. Poles on the other side, so that 2 people carrying the ark would walk between them. So you have enough room. There's 2.5 cubits between each pole. So that was the Kohanim, when they carried the ark, they were able to carry it, that 2 people could still carry the pole on each side. So it had 2 rings. These are the 4 rings mentioned in the beginning of the verse. And the scripture now explains to where they were placed. The vav is superfluous. Interpretation, shteta boys, 2 rings. Why it say the? You can reconcile by the interpreting this way. And the 2 rings shall be on one side, meaning that the 2 of the 4 rings mentioned at the beginning of the verse shall be on one side. Saleh is a side. Seats about the matzeh shittim. Then you should make poles out of wood, acacia wood. It's a piece of you cover these poles with gold. Bade, the word bade means poles. And then you bring the poles in its rings. To carry the odin. But then the Torah tells us, even though the poles were there to carry the odin, which was as you'll learn further in the Torah, the other things also had poles, but they were not needed there the whole time. But when it comes to the odin, to this ark, once you put these poles into the odin, you're not allowed to remove these poles ever, even when it was laying in the Mishkan for years and years and years, and they didn't carry it. It needs to be, these poles need to be in the odin. You're not allowed to move the poles from this ark, even when it's not moving. Forever. And we know that the ark is still someplace underneath the temple. It's still there with its poles. You should put into this odin. You shall put the Eidos, the testimony, the 10 Commandments, which I'm going to give to you. Now she says, therefore, the question is, the whole argument in the Gemara, when was the commandment of the building of the Beis Hamikdash, the building of the Mishkan? Was it after the story of the Egel, after Matan Torah, before Matan Torah? It's a whole separate issue, but it sounds over here like it's before, because he says, which I'm going to give to you. I'm going to give you the 10 Commandments. That means, in essence, that the building of the Mishkan was already commanded before Matan Torah. But that's a separate issue. This is the Torah, which serves as a testimony. Mitzvahs aksuvas, which I'm going to command you, the mitzvahs, because it also could mean, so I'm holding this is the meaning that the Torah, there always needed to be a Torah, besides the 10 Commandments that was in the ark, there was also a Torah there. So it doesn't go on the 10 Commandments, but it goes in the Torah, which ultimately was written after 40 years in the desert. That completes the Chumash for today. We now go to the Tanya of the day, and we start chapter 27 of Tanya. The way the Frierdiker Rebbe, as you see, he puts a whole chapter on Shabbos. So every week we're going to miss the whole chapter. You're not going to miss it. Hopefully you learn the Tanya by yourself. So we missed yesterday with chapter 26, the whole chapter, and now we start chapter 27. Alter Rebbe now goes into, he started already yesterday, goes into the concept of self-struggle, that we can give everything the way it should be, but the pearl is there are self-struggles. And there's atzvus, depression, unhappiness, etc. The previous chapter, Alter Rebbe stated that sadness, how does one control the sadness? Hinders one's service to God in general. And in the battle of Yetzer Hara, if somebody's sad, as Alter Rebbe says, you can't win a war. You can be very strong, but if you're depressed and you're unhappy, you lost the war already. He therefore discusses the means of overcoming sadness. And Alter Rebbe says the worst thing a person can be is a person that is sad. This kind of overcoming sadness caused by material. There's many reasons why a person's sad. The Alter Rebbe says by material concerns or by anxiety of over one's sins. This chapter and the next, he will discuss the type of melancholy that caused by concerning over one's sinful thoughts and desires. We all have a Yetzer Hara, and it's shocking that we all struggle with this, with a Yetzer Hara, with evil inclination that occupies our brain with evil thoughts and desires. This category itself may be further subdivided into two. Number one, where these thoughts occur while one is occupied with material affairs, that push the whole day it's bothering him. Or number two, when these thoughts disturb from the God's service, he's trying to learn Torah, he's trying to daven and pray, and he has all these machshavas zaros, evil thoughts of depression, of who he is and his negative things that he's done in his life. In this chapter, the Alter Rebbe discusses the first situation, which occurs during his time at work. He states that not only these thoughts, no cause of sadness, on the contrary, it ought to give rise to joy. That's again the beauty of the Alter Rebbe. It changes everything, to look at everything negative, to look at it as positive. And look how he says it. If, however, sadness does not come from anxiety over sins, over that he's committed, but from fact that sinful thoughts and desires enters his mind, what should bothers him? He has desires, taivus. His character is getting in his way. If these thoughts occur to him not during the service of God, he's having these thoughts when he's doing his own affairs, with his mundane matters alike, while he's working, while he's with his family, while he's enjoying life. He's having all these thoughts, negative thoughts. He should actually be happy. Even though these thoughts come to his mind, he averts it from the attention of them. Meaning it's clear that here we are speaking of one who does not willfully dwell on sinful thoughts, for if he does so, he's a sinner. And the previous chapter already dwelt with sadness arising from sins. Over here, we're not talking about that. We're talking about a person that has, not that he's worried about his Avedis, he's dealt with that a little bit. A person that should have machshava zaros, it's called machshava zaros. He has alien thoughts. He cannot concentrate. Simple that it's hard for him to ADD. He can't concentrate. He doesn't have a chemical issue. He has a mental issue. It bothers him. He cannot have any thoughts. He's bothered. He's worried. He's anxieties, whatever. Worry what's going to be tomorrow. So here the Eibishter gives him a mitzvah. Every time I have an alien thought, the Eibishter Pasha gives me a commandment. I can do a mitzvah. And what's the mitzvah? To do what it says in the Torah. Every day you say this pasuk 3 times, 4 times a day. It's in the Shema. He fulfills the injunction, you shall not follow your heart and after your eyes, which makes you go astray. The Eibishter tells you, you have free choice to push it, simply not look at what you usually look at, to not think of what you usually think. I'm giving you a mitzvah. I gave you the machshava zara. So, because I want to give you a mitzvah. So, only when sinful thoughts enter one's mind, he fulfills the command. For the intention of the verse is that not one be a level where such thought would never occur to him, If such thoughts never occurred to him, so why is there a pasuk? This is the level of a tzaddik. A tzaddik never has sinful thoughts. A tzaddik never has a thought that is alien. He was just talking about the Yidden that have alien thoughts. And God tells you, don't listen to your thoughts. Change your thoughts. So the Eibush is Pashut, simply talking to each one of us. The verse refers to either one who does have such thoughts, and it gives you a mitzvah. I mean, in essence, a tzaddik, what's it? When the tzaddik says, don't follow the whims of your heart. Who's the tzaddik? Is somebody thinking? Who's he talking to? But I know who he's talking to. Talking to me. Control my heart. Control your desires. As the Alter Rebbe continues, Pasuk is not talking to righteous people. The Kroyim referring to them, Zainim. The Eibush says, a tzaddik follows his desires. Tzaddik only has a desire for God. As for Shalom, God elevating him. The Pasuk is talking to middle people. He enters erotic thoughts. Erotic thoughts. When it's innocent by nature, or God forbid the other way. But when he averts his mind from this thought, Mekayim loves that. He completely does this mitzvah. So the thought, as we learned before, the thought that comes to his mind, that's his nature. He has erotic, he has a passionate heart, and he has erotic thoughts, and it can be even kosher erotic. He's thinking about his wife, or he's thinking about her husband, and he has these erotic thoughts, but it doesn't belong. It doesn't belong here. I'm trying to daven. I'm trying to learn. Why am I having erotic thoughts? The Eibishter, God simply wants to give you a mitzvah. The Eibishter wants to give you a mitzvah. And our sages said, a blessed memory, if one passively refrains from sin, when I control myself, you might think, so what did I accomplish? Did I do a mitzvah? I just didn't do something that I had a desire. So the Eibishter helps you. The Gemara says that it's considered as if I did a positive commandment. So now simply, the Alter Rebbe says, you should be happy. We should all be happy. B'kiyam alav, you pashut, I did a mitzvah. Every time I push off a thought, I simply did a mitzvah. Like I put on tefillin. Hopefully I'm happy when I put on tefillin. Hopefully I'm happy when I keep kosher. Hopefully I'm happy when I give tzedakah. I should be happy when I do this mitzvah. Why am I sad? Why am I sad in the negative? Not happy in the positive. That I have that a person has a desire, even an evil kind of a constant desire, which he starts to think about. That's your nature. You're not a tzaddik. Shalom aleichem. You're not a tzaddik, and therefore you're going to have a desire. The desire was there that you should push it off. And that's the mitzvah. So be happy for the mitzvah that the Eibishter gave you. Thus, not only one should this occurrence of these thoughts not grieve him, but he ought to bring him joy. For the only thereby he's be able to do a mitzvah. And he should be happy that Baruch Hashem, the Eibishter God gave him a mitzvah. And that completes the Tanya for today. Today is the second day of the month of Adar Rishon, the first Adar. The Tillim of the day is chapter 10 to chapter 17. If you do those chapters, you would do the Chitas of the day. In Mid Shem, at 10 a.m., we will continue to learn Chassidus. At 10 a.m., either the JEI at the school at the Chabad Center, or you can come on Zoom, Torah Direct. Have a wonderful and beautiful Sunday and a wonderful and beautiful week.